welcome to the 2 p.m. Burning Tree Program Spotlight. Burning Tree is a family-owned organization founded by David Elliott in 1999. Our initial program is outside of Dallas in Kaufman, Texas. It is a co-ed, long-term residential program for men and women. Average length of stay is anywhere from 8 to 14 months with a year of transitions. David Elliott expanded Burning Tree in 2004 and opened up Burning Tree Lodge. And 2 years ago, David Elliott brought on a gentleman named Peter Pirano who helped rebrand and bring a different level of excellence to Burning Tree. And we rebranded the lodge to Renewal Lodge by Burning Tree, which is a clinically advanced mindfulness approach to the 12 steps. And then newest to the family of Burning Tree is Awakenings Hill Country. It is a women-only, women helping women 30, 60, 90-day program in Fredericksburg, Texas, headed up by Jessica and her husband, Josh Slay. And then Burning Tree in Tucson, Arizona has an extended care program. And that program is a young adult with a collegiate track. And then we also have some sober living environment homes for men and women in Tucson. So without any further delay, I am very honored to bring on Mr. Zach Snitzer. Been in the business several years. I've always admired and watched Zach in this business. Zach is one of the owners and founders of Maryland Addiction Recovery Center, Mark. And I know Patty Raymer, who's one of our national business development people at Burning Tree. I know that Patty is also from Baltimore, and I understand, Zach, you're a Baltimore native.
I am.
Do you like blue crab?
I would have. First, I do love blue crab, but I would have to say that I love blue crab regardless, being from here.
Okay.
And Old Bay also.
Old Bay, is that a different type of crab?
Old Bay is a spice used on crabs, Eric.
Okay.
That you should try.
I would love to try one of these days. So welcome to Burning Tree Spotlight, Burning Tree Program Spotlight.
Thank you.
So Zach, tell me, how did you and your partners come up with the vision of Maryland Addiction Recovery Center, Mark?
It's a good question. So Mark is about 6 years old. The vision really for it was, we're family owned and operated. There's three owners, myself, my wife, and then Sam Bierman, who's our executive director. So the idea for it really came from kind of our early recovery, all three of us working in the treatment field. We entered recovery, got sober in Delray Beach in the 2007, 2008 time period. And the idea really came from all of our experiences in treatment, working in treatment, in recovery, and then a lot of the experiences that my wife Ora and Sam had working at Karen Renaissance down in Boca. And the idea really was taking this long-term model, more of a long-term extended care model, so post-detox, post-traditional 28-day treatment, creating kind of a community reintegration model, right? So we knew that 30 days is kind of just a starting point for like long-term sustainable recovery. So the idea was, where could we create like a comprehensive, robust clinical program post 30 days, and really kind of support patients into the clinical work that they needed to do, the community-based services and the recovery support that they needed. We really based it around obviously some extended care models that were out there, as well as some of the studies that you saw, a lot of it from Robert DuPont in DC, where they talked about like 5-year quote unquote success rates, right? So long-term clinical care, community-based recovery support, 12-step meetings or otherwise, and then kind of ongoing monitoring. And we figured, how could we best create that in an accessible and affordable treatment program? So more beefed up on clinical so they could utilize insurance, and kind of less so on kind of out-of-pocket costs, although there are some, and then give them some of like the vocational programming, academic and college success programming, so forth. So really it's not exactly like Burning Tree in terms of like kind of the 8 to 14 months or longer. We're 90-day minimum. Our average length of stay is about 7.5 months, and they transition through that continuum. So the idea is like you take away clinical services, they're already living in recovery. Their families obviously been doing the clinical work, and they're integrated back into their family, and either they're back in school or they're employed. So you kind of take away a lot of the barriers that you would say like traditionally lead to relapse, right?
Right.
So that's kind of the model that we started. So the idea was, we knew kind of that model would work. I'm from Maryland originally. Sam and my wife are from New York. But when we were in Florida, I mean, Florida obviously for years was known. There's some really, at the time especially, there were some really world-renowned programs down there, and a ton of recovery houses and 12-step meetings and so forth. And we would see, I mean, thousands of people, right, from all over the country that would either go to treatment and then, or go to treatment somewhere and then go down to that area for like recovery housing and to get sober, or would go down there for treatment and stay.
Yeah.
And I always noticed that there was like literally thousands of like people from like Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, especially thousands from Jersey, a ton from like all these different areas. And the Maryland, DC, Virginia, like the DMV area where I was from, was like very few and far between. There were some people, but not nearly as many as other areas. So my thought process was like, why is that? Why is that the case? And I don't really have the answer for that, but I think really one of the reasons is, one, this area is very homegrown. So like people, they're born, they're raised here. A lot of them go into their family business. A lot of them either go away for, say, college and then come right back, or they go away, they might go to like a larger city for a couple of years and come back. And a lot of there's a ton of higher education, and the majority of the large scale like employers, especially in Maryland, are family owned and operated businesses. They may be, mid-sized, they may be large, but they're typically like people work for them generationally. That might be the reason. I don't know if that's why it was, but the truth is like the situation we were in was there was not a lot of people from this area. So we're like, well, this would be a really good place for our idea of this model, because we really wanted to make it kind of community oriented and community based. And there was some really good, like Ashley's here, right? So there's some really long standing, really good treatment programs, but there weren't many long term kind of community reintegration. There was like some IOPs, there was like some, some not a huge amount, but some recovery houses, and some really good kind of traditional, 28-day, maybe a little bit longer treatment programs. Karen obviously is not that far in Wernersville. So we thought this model would really kind of fill a need and fill a gap. And so we kind of started out and have grown based on what we believe is like that recovery principle of like, where are we filling a need, right? Are we filling it just to expand? Or are we really filling the need that there is for like the community and our patients and their families and the referrants and all that kind of stuff? So
now you guys, because the community and the culture that you're creating in your community, you're getting people from the 3-state area.
So the majority, I'd say about 70 to 75% of our patients, whether it's like the extended care. So there's an extended care portion of that program, 50-bed extended care, men and women, 18 and older. And then we have a couple intensive outpatient programs for like the local community. But regardless of program, overall, like our census is typically like 70, 75%, like Maryland, DC, Virginia, Pennsylvania probably. And then we have certain, based on kind of like the work that we do and kind of the level of clinical services offered and like ability to handle like co-occurring. For extended care, we get people from all over, because they'll have gone to treatment somewhere and say, hey, they really need more than like an IOP in a recovery house, or more than a recovery house. They really need like this comprehensive thing. So we'll get patients from most are up and down East Coast, but we get them from all over. But the majority are local, yeah.
So filling into this spot that you shared about fulfilling a need for the community, is that how your organization decided to partner with Karen and partner up with Encore?
Encore, yeah. So Encore is an intensive outpatient and a PHP level of care in Arlington, Virginia. So they really service Northern Virginia and the DC area. But that was basically the reasoning. So Encore was a really well established, a really well respected clinical program that had 4 founders, and it was just one of those things where like they either wanted to do something else or they were just kind of having some issues in terms of kind of operation stuff. So basically, their founders had reached out to me personally, had reached out to Sam, who's our executive director, had reached out to some of their contacts within the industry, kind of just for support as they had started. I think they were around for 2 years or so. And it just came to the point where they were having some more so like back end administrative stuff, right? So they had 4 really good founders. One was a clinician. One had done kind of case management interventions. One had a clinical and a BD background. One had a financial. Very little operations. And as we all know, like bringing it all together from an operational standpoint for behavioral health and addiction treatment is really, really difficult. And if you don't have experience, so I think really what happened was they just didn't know what they didn't know, but they were providing and delivering really, really top-notch clinical services. So as they were having some of the operational problems, they kind of reached out to us. And then a lot of the local therapists, psychiatrists, residential programs in that area basically were saying like, hey, we don't want anything to happen to it because patients are doing really well there. And they're actually really, really delivering like great care for addiction, but also they had a kind of a trauma focus.
Yeah.
So it just kind of came from the understanding of us of like, they are filling a need. They're filling a really, really great need in that area. And from Karen's perspective, our thought process was like, this industry, you see a lot of like really, really poor providers, bad actors kind of coming up all over the place. It would be a shame if a really, really good program had to stop operating just based on the fact that like it was a really good idea and the founders were just kind of like, well, we didn't realize certain things, right? So we were just it was let's make sure. And it wasn't like we think there's a need. Like we were directly hearing the need from like therapists, outpatient psychiatry, like all these people that are in that DC metro and Northern Virginia area saying like, we can't have this program go anywhere because it's doing really good work. So that was kind of where we had this like.
Well, I've always been impressed with Mr. Tom Walker.
So Tom's the executive director. Tom's got has a clinical and a business development background, and I'll tell you they've been doing phenomenally well. So they switched to all virtual when the COVID stuff happened, but they brought in a really, really strong clinical director, and they're just doing really good. They're doing really good work right now for that area.
So it fell right in line with your mission. That you shared originally.
It aligned with our mission in terms of kind of filling a need. It aligned with our mission of like true collaboration in this field, right? Because a lot of times people are like, these are my patients or this is my area or we can't work together because we do similar levels of care. Like Mark and Encore have very similar levels of care and we're not that far away from each other. But there's ways that we work together really, really well, and they do better with certain patients. We do better with certain people. So. It was really one of those things of like, how can all these organizations truly collaborate for the greater good?
What I've grown to realize and see, collaboration is the key when we're fighting the disease of addiction and alcoholism, because we need as many people involved as possible.
Yeah.
Because where our disease wants us is isolated and in fear and not wanting to reach out. So.
There's enough people. I mean, like we all know that like 10% of people that need help are actually seeking services. So like there's clearly a need and there's clearly enough people that we can all help together, right? So
So that leads me to you guys, Maryland Addiction Recovery Center, Mark. Then you wanted to open up a detox in collaboration.
So
Tell us about Anovo.
Yeah, so we opened up Anovo. So we kind of aligned with the filling a need. So us, Encore, before we were even involved, a lot of the local programs here in the DMV area, but also like kind of the Mid-Atlantic. We were in need of kind of like standalone detox services because there's not that many. There's a couple, but again, the amount of people that are seeking services, there aren't that many providers. And we all know that not everyone needs to go from like, you know, a detox res, extended care, PHP, IOP, like the continuum of care looks different. So on March 16th, we opened up Anovo. So it's based in Abbottstown, Pennsylvania. It's right over the Maryland, Pennsylvania line. It's about 50 minutes from Baltimore. It's about an hour and a half from DC or Philadelphia. So it's a standalone detox, handling any kind of substance use disorder, 24-hour medical coverage. You know, it's basically your 5 to 10 day detox medical stabilization, get them to the next level of care.
That's fantastic.
And we also opened up on March 16th, right as COVID happened. So I can, you know, from the recovery principle of like, hey, if I can't help you, but I know somebody that's gone through that experience, let me put you in touch with them. If anyone wants to open up a behavioral health care medical facility in a public health pandemic, I'm happy to share my experience.
So, and then your executive director over there is Molly Ashcroft.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep. So Molly took over the helm there. Molly has a background in initially kind of long-term behavioral health care. So she worked for a male-only extended care in Connecticut. She actually worked for Maryland Addiction Recovery Center. She was our corporate director of admissions and development. So she oversaw admissions, did a lot of operational stuff. And then she's overseeing the day-to-day of the detox as the executive director.
Well, so tell me, Zach, you're the director of business development, right? I would assume that
Sure.
you're the culture creator.
Let's not go that far. That might be good.
Sure. What's a day look like now for you?
A day. What does a day look like for me? So I do a lot of like the back end communication stuff and PR and social media and branding and all that too. So that's pretty easy. Other than that, it is Zoom meeting upon Zoom meeting upon phone call and Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, I'm really looking forward so I can get kind of out of the office and, you know, visit places and develop relationships. And like, it's if there's another Zoom meeting that I have to go to, you know, that's what my day looks like. It's a virtual phone call, virtual meeting. We all can't have a Facebook platform to host shows, Eric.
Yeah. Well, I heard you discount the work that you do with the social media component. And I want you to know, Zach, that is a huge piece. So don't undersell yourself. That is a huge piece of connecting with people. Absolutely. And that's a higher power working through you in other avenues.
I think it's a good, you know, I think the social media part of like treatment is people, in my opinion, people mistake that for like a referral source or like a revenue, you know what I mean? Like we can get patient, and I'm like, I just don't see it that way. I really think it's a platform really to kind of brand, like, so the way that we use that is we use it obviously for anything that happens at any of the organizations, right? So we want to educate anyone that's on there about what we're doing, but it's really kind of a platform, whatever you want to look at it, whether it's like breaking the stigma or just educating about it. Like I like using it for an understanding of like what treatment should be, because there's so much out there of like what treatment shouldn't be, right? Yeah. And the general public or the consumer that's looking for their self or a loved one doesn't know the difference, right? Like they don't know the difference between, you know, a IOP in a recovery house or, you know, in our area, like an Ashley or a Karen that's 30 days or a burning tree. They don't know the difference, right? They only know that when they talk to someone for your organization, you can kind of break that down and explain why this is appropriate for, or potentially not appropriate for your loved one or for you, right? So like, I think just overall, just education about addiction as a chronic illness, what recovery should look like, you know, what's appropriate treatment, how to find appropriate care, depending, you know, I think social media for that is a very good platform.
Well, you're talking my language. I think it's all about connecting and being in front and being reminded. So I'm looking behind you over your left shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
and I see a raven
Of
on
course.
top of a Colts helmet.
Yep.
That is a great analogy.
So my father gave that to me. I am. Let's talk about resentment for a moment. So I am still absolutely resentful at Robert Irsay and the Colts when they stole the team from under a cloud of darkness. And that was a resentment that was transferred to me because I was only 4 years old from my father. So that was where that came from. Right.
Wow.
It took the old school, like the generation, above mine, like for the Colts fans a very long time to like accept the Ravens as our team. So
okay.
It's like a reminder.
Well, I know that Patty Raymer is very much looking forward to the opportunity for her to get back up and to go see Anovo if she hadn't already, and be with you guys at Maryland Addiction Recovery Center and get over to Encore. And I am personally, I'm very thankful for watching you and your family on the social media platforms. And I can't thank you enough for your heart-centered, family-created business that you guys are helping people find freedom up there in the 3-state area. And how do you pronounce that area? Pennsylvania, Maryland.
So Maryland, DC, Virginia is usually the DMV.
The DMV. I can't thank you enough, Zach.
Eric, thanks so much.
Yeah. Have a great afternoon. Wow. Thank you again, Zach, for sharing with us about Maryland Addiction Recovery Center and how you guys have just expanded and filled a need up in your area. So this spotlight is drawn to a close. Burning Tree program has been around since 1999. We're family owned, just as Maryland Addiction Recovery Center is. Mark. David Elliott started Burning Tree in 1999 with the initial program of Burning Tree Ranch. It is a long-term residential program for men and women who have had several failed attempts at a life of sobriety. The 8 to 14-month residential is followed up by a year of what we call transitions. Then in 2004, David Elliott created Burning Tree Lodge, which is now Renewal Lodge by Burning Tree. And Renewal Lodge is a mindfulness approach, clinically advanced to the 12 steps. And we are an in-network provider with all major insurance providers here in the United States. And then newest to our family of programs is Awakenings Hill Country, which is headed up by Jessica and Josh Slay. It is in Fredericksburg. It is a women's only residential treatment center, 30, 60, 90 day. They're going to meet your loved one where they're at and help them walk through the traumatic experiences that ladies have experienced previously to getting sober. And then we have in Tucson, Arizona, Burning Tree West. Burning Tree West is a young adult for men and women, young adult extended care program with a collegiate track. So thank you for your time watching Burning Tree Programs Spotlight. And thank you again, Zach.